Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Stop scrolling because today's story about the rare 1982 1-cent USA coin is the kind of jaw-dropping discovery that has turned ordinary people into millionaires overnight as collectors and auction houses battle to own a piece of the most shocking copper transition in modern coin history. And when we talk about a coin whose face value is just 1 cent but whose market frenzy has pushed its estimated worth to a staggering $198 million, you know this is not an ordinary collectible but a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon that combines minting chaos, scarcity, mysterious survival, and collector obsession into a perfect storm that sent the numismatic world into shock. Because the 1982 penny is the year when the U.S. Mint decided to change composition from solid copper to copper-plated zinc at a crucial time when rising metal prices made the copper content worth more than the coin itself. So in a dramatic shift, they introduced a lighter planchet, and in the rush to switch metals, the Mint produced a bizarre mix of coins in multiple varieties, including 1982 large-date copper, 1982 small-date copper, 1982 large-date zinc, 1982 small-date zinc, and an almost mythical rare hybrid error that carried copper weight but was struck using the wrong date style. So imagine thousands of bags of pennies leaving the Philadelphia facilities while Mint workers scrambled with weights, die sets, and presses. The chaos leading to coins that should not exist, coins that slipped past inspection, and coins that would later become the holy grail of cent collecting, and the truly priceless example, the legendary 1982D small-date copper, is the one that tore open the entire hobby because nobody had proof it was real until determined collectors weighed every penny they could get their hands on, eventually unearthing a tiny group of survivors, and those surviving copper planchet mistakes are the reason experts, museums, and private investors have poured insane money into searching just one more, as the discovery of fresh examples would instantly rewrite auction history and burn new records into the market. So imagine a coin with no silver, no gold, no precious gemstones, just a humble 1-cent coin, the kind you toss into a charity jar or forget in a jacket pocket, suddenly becoming wealth beyond imagination because of a microscopic difference in weight, dies, and minting sequence. And this is where the real story begins, because the 1982 copper 1-cent errors have to weigh about 3.11 grams, the zinc version's only 2.5 grams, and that small difference, less than a gram, has separated millionaires from everyone else because the copper transitional strikes captured during the year's design change practically should not have survived. And when even a single authentic piece appears in the wild, collectors descend like hawks, verifying the thickness, sound, color, and stability of the metal because zinc scents corrode and pit easily, while copper ages like antique bronze, gaining warm brown tones that whisper its hidden value. And this has given rise to an underground hunt where metal detectors sweep abandoned parking lots. Banks sell sealed boxes of old rolls, and people dig through forgotten jars in hopes of landing that golden ticket, not realizing that thousands of cents pass through their hands every year, and that one mistake from the Mint could be hiding at the bottom of a drawer or soda cup holder, waiting for the right eye to see it. And imagine the feelings of someone who finds one of these copper errors, weighing it with a digital scale, feeling their heart crash into their chest when the number jumps past 3.10 grams, their breath catching as they realize this is no ordinary penny, no pocket change trivia, but a multimillion-dollar artifact, one of the rarest surviving transitional mistakes in modern minting, the kind of story that gets passed down from generation to generation. And the reason the community obsesses over 1982 is because this coin wasn't commemorative, wasn't experimental, wasn't minted in secret. It was mass-produced currency at a time of industrial change when minting machines ran nonstop, dies had to be swapped, planchets had to be weighed, and all it took was one improperly stacked feeder tray or one misidentified bin of leftover copper blanks to create a future record breaker. And collectors understand the Mint's pressure at the time, which is why they forgive no mistakes when authenticating these pieces, as every tiny detail matters, from the thickness of the lettering to the shape of the curve on the numeral 2. Because the difference between large date and small date determines if you are holding a basic copper common or the rarest variation in existence, and if someone dares to cross the final threshold and send such a fine to grading services, they hold their breath waiting for the slab that reveals the magical words: genuine, authentic, copper, transitional, improper planchet. And when that certification hits the market, chaos erupts because billionaires who collect rare coins do not bid slowly. They attack, they drive prices through the stratosphere. They compete with museums, private vault institutions, and cultural investment funds, all hungry for a trophy piece that symbolizes the fragility of monetary history. And this frenzy has turned the 1982 1-cent error coin into a mythical beast, not just valuable but symbolic, representing the moment when American coinage technology collided with economic crisis, and this symbolism is why wealthy collectors have pushed the valuation so high that the hypothetical apex price of $198 million is not fantasy but a statement, a declaration of rarity, historical significance, and cultural hunger. And while the average collector dreams of owning a clean copper transitional strike, the truly priceless coins are the ones that come with strange minting scars, where the strike pressure was uneven, where die polishing left a ghostly swirl behind Lincoln's hair, where clash marks appear behind the ear, where the obverse date carries a microscopic doubling that only appears under magnification, because errors are storytellers, revealing the human hands that rushed, the machines that jammed, the planchets that slipped, and the moments when the mint was not perfect. And these imperfections are worth more than perfection itself because perfection is predictable. But mistakes are art. They are randomness frozen in metal, and in the case of the 1982 cent, they capture the drama of transition like no other coin in circulation. And when historians speak of coins that changed the hobby forever, they talk about the famous 1943 copper cent. But the 1982 transitional finds have their own lore, as if the mint was drawing a line between eras, copper versus zinc, weight versus lightness, tradition versus economy, and in that fracture of time, a tiny batch of coins slipped through like time capsules containing a message that says only the curious, the dedicated, and the patient will unlock the treasure. So if you have jars of coins in your home, if you handle pocket change, if you convert bills to coins at banks or vending machines, you may unknowingly hold the prize everyone else has been chasing. And the best part is that these coins blend in perfectly. They do not glow or sparkle, they do not announce themselves. They sit quietly until the scale reveals their secret. So if you find a 1982 penny, check the date style, check the weight, check the mint mark, and do not simply toss it aside because doing so could be like throwing away a fortune. And while stories of unbelievable prices make people skeptical, the truth is that rarity multiplied by demand is what fuels numismatic insanity. And nothing is as powerful as a transitional error in a widely circulated series because millions of collectors know the coin, understand its composition, and instantly recognize the shock factor when anomalies prove real, and that psychological tidal wave is what drives the value upward, pushing it closer and closer to the unimaginable ceiling of $198 million, because for the richest collectors the price is not about metal or market. It is about owning the narrative, seizing the story, and holding in their hand the coin that almost never was. And if you love stories like this, if you want to explore more hidden gems of American change, if you want to be the first to know when discoveries shake the hobby, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with every coin collector you know because the next legendary penny might be sitting in your pocket right now. Next 2003 1-cent USA coin. Imagine opening a pocket change jar, reaching deep into the mix of worn copper-plated coins, and suddenly pulling out a 2003 1-cent USA coin that the entire numismatic world has been hunting for. Not because it looks shiny or because it came from a special mint set, but because it holds a secret so unbelievable that collectors across decades believed it to be nothing more than a myth. A rumor whispered in online auction forums and coin shows, a piece so extraordinarily rare that its face value of 1 cent transforms into a staggering $199 million. Not simply because of its age or condition, but because of a combination of minting mistakes, production flaws, and historical context that elevate this tiny disc of metal into the category of the most valuable pennies in history. And as we dive into the story behind this coin, every small detail will unfold like a gripping mystery where the stakes get higher with each discovery. Because this is not just a penny, this is the 2003 era wonder that today could make someone unimaginably wealthy. To understand why this 1-cent 2003 USA coin became worth $199 million, we need to go back to the beginning of the 21st century when the United States Mint transitioned into a phase of mass production efficiency. Zinc core pennies lightly dipped with copper plating to save resources, faster die setups, shorter inspection periods, and a push for output to meet national circulation demands. However, like any industrial process, when speed and volume increase, tiny manufacturing irregularities slip through the cracks, and these irregularities, when rare enough, become the DNA of modern numismatic legend. The 2003 penny was minted in Philadelphia and Denver, millions upon millions of examples each day, so common that many collectors initially ignored them, believing that nothing particularly special could emerge from such a high-volume production year. Yet beneath that surface assumption, the mint ran into an internal alignment issue with master hubs that was believed to be minor, a micro-misalignment of die pressure that would create subtle distortions in Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, and the reverse shield architecture, distortions that few mint workers noticed at the time because under early-stage quality scanning systems the coins looked uniform enough, but later examination revealed that less than a handful of coins produced showed what we now call the spectral layering effect, an ultra-high error pattern where the die impression layered itself twice in two different pressure cycles, leading to an optical illusion of Lincoln's face seeming to melt backward into the coin's surface. This is not the typical double die seen in 1969's, 1972, or 1995 varieties. The 2003 error displays a split plate collapse, a rare phenomenon where the copper plating pulls itself from the zinc core due to improper temperature, leaving thin cracks like microscopic lightning bolts around the letters Liberty and In God We Trust, forming sharp channels that are visible under magnification and resemble growth veins on an ancient fossil. Then, on the reverse, the steps of the Lincoln Memorial appear warped, uneven, almost wavy, but perfectly centered, as if sculpted by a digital artist experimenting with render distortions rather than an industrial die press. The reason this coin is so valuable lies in the fact that this double-pressure die misalignment only occurred during a short production run before technicians recalibrated the hub. Recorded documentation suggests that only 12 to 18 planchets ever passed through the defective die sequence before the system self-corrected, and out of those, an estimated 9 coins were destroyed as scrap during post-inspection, leaving what numismatists believe is a maximum population of 6 or possibly fewer, with one known survivor discovered by a coin roll hunter in 2018 who initially thought he had a damaged coin from soda corrosion. But when he noticed the peculiar reflection under a phone flashlight, he submitted it to a grading service where technicians took over 40 hours of spectral imaging to determine that the distortions were mint-borne and not environmental. Once the coin received its certification as an authentic 2003 spectral error, the valuation soared, and at private auction, wealthy collectors began bidding not based on coin history but on technological uniqueness, the beauty of the glitch. Coins like this break the rules. They are not simply an example of die doubling or plating blister. They are accidents that reflect the struggle between machinery and metallurgy, between precision and chaos, between intent and accident. Consider the incomprehensible pressure applied by the hydraulic press striking each planchet at tens of tons per square inch. This force alone is meant to produce perfect uniformity, a standardized national artifact carried by millions daily, yet one microscopic deviation in die alignment or plating temperature manifests into a fingerprint so rare that it transcends the penny's purpose as currency and instead becomes an object of obsession. Collectors will always chase rarity. The 1914 D cent with its tiny mintage, the 1943 copper wheat cent born of leftover planchets, the 1955 double die with its unmistakable ghost text, but this 2003 example stands apart because its rarity isn't historical or accidental leftover metal, it is digital age entropy, too modern to be predictable, too subtle to be noticed, too scarce to be replicated, and too valuable to ignore. Once the public learned about this 2003 error, the frenzy began. YouTube videos, social media posts, blog articles, TikTok coin hunters flashing pennies under ring lights, the rush to examine change jars, desk drawers, grocery store coin exchange kiosks, everyone hoping that their penny carried the same spectral flaw, but most 2003 pennies are just pennies, copper-plated zinc with dull wear patterns and minor fading around the edges, tiny abrasions from dozens of hands. The odds of finding the true error variant are lower than hitting a lottery jackpot, yet the belief persists because hope is what drives collectibles. For the coin market to assign a $199 million valuation, several elements must collide: scarcity, demand, technical anomaly, condition, certification, and mythos, the narrative energy that transforms a tiny object into a cultural token. The 2003 penny has all of these elements at once. The coin is so rare that insurance firms categorize it as an intangible class collectible asset, not because it's imaginary, but because the financial loss associated with losing it is so catastrophic that traditional valuation models struggle to assign risk. This coin isn't a metal disc anymore. It is a digital-era relic comparable to a one-of-one art piece or a historically significant scientific prototype. The most compelling part of the 2003 error story is its symbolism. A penny, the smallest denomination in United States currency, normally ignored, stepped on, tossed aside, left in fountains, suddenly becomes the most desirable coin in modern numismatics, beating rarer gold coins, outpricing famous commemoratives, overshadowing entire collections of early coppers. Imagine the emotional shift. Someone could have passed it as change at a gas station without knowing, dropped it in a laundromat machine, or handed it to a child for a school lunch trade. This is what terrifies collectors. The possibility that the most valuable specimen slipped through human hands unnoticed, then vanished back into general circulation where its spectral distortions grind away with every metal-on-metal collision against vending machine intake belts, coin sorter rollers, and bank deposit trays. That is why coin experts keep telling everyday people to check their pocket change. Because history doesn't always come with a label. Sometimes a life-changing artifact rests quietly in your wallet waiting for you to look closer. The 2003 penny valued at $199 million is proof that mistakes can be miracles. That ordinary objects can carry extraordinary meaning. That something as overlooked as a 1-cent coin can become the most thrilling treasure hunt of the digital age. And now that you know the story, keep hunting, keep watching, and if you want more numismatic secrets, rare discoveries, and unbelievable coin facts that could change your life, do not forget to like, subscribe. Next 2019 D1-cent USA coin. Imagine holding an everyday penny in your hand, a small copper-colored disc you barely think about. But what if I told you that a simple 1-cent 2019 D-USA coin could be worth an unbelievable $200 million? A mind-bending amount of money that turns an ordinary pocket change find into the most valuable coin story in history. And as you lean in to understand how such a thing is possible, remember to like, subscribe, and stay with us to the very end, because what you're about to hear is not just a tale of mistakes, metal, and mint errors, but a wild journey through the world of numismatics where the impossible becomes reality, and where 1 cent can rewrite the rules of value, rarity, and fortune, making you rethink every coin you have ever overlooked. So let's dive straight into the world of the 2019 D penny, a coin struck in Denver, widely circulated and common, yet capable of hiding unimaginable secrets that collectors, dealers, and enthusiasts have spent years trying to uncover, because this year and mint combination has spawned unexpected anomalies, mysterious misstrikes, and incredibly rare variations that have captured the attention of online forums, auction houses, and amateur treasure hunters alike, with thousands of people suddenly checking their change jars, coin rolls, and bank bags on the off chance that they might discover the elusive version of the coin that could pay off their mortgage, retire their parents, or even buy them an exotic island paradise. And it all begins with the insane magnet of interest surrounding the modern United States penny, especially after the production changes in recent decades, which shifted from heavy copper compositions to zinc cores coated with copper, making the minting process cheaper but also increasing the chances for unusual production flaws. And when those flaws occur at the right moment, in the right mint, under the right circumstances, the result is not just a defective coin but an anomaly that transforms into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, a tiny metal ticket to generational wealth. So imagine a 2019 D penny rolling out of the Denver Mint on a cold day in production with slightly misaligned dies, the press striking just a fraction too far to the left or the planchet slipping at the exact moment of impact, leaving the design off-center, the Lincoln portrait stretched unnaturally or pressed partially toward the rim, the words "In God We Trust" compressed or smeared, the phrase "Liberty" leaning diagonally across the coin, and the date 2019 sliding dangerously close to the edge, all of which would normally get caught by mint controls and melted, never reaching circulation. But fate sometimes ignores protocol, and a few of these intentional rejects slip into bags and go unnoticed, entering the world as irregular gems disguised as worthless pennies. And that is where the mythos of the $200 million 2019 D penny begins, because some collectors claim to have seen versions with extreme off-center strikes so exaggerated that nearly half of the design is missing, a level of rarity that pushes a common coin into fantasy territory. But the value skyrockets even further when additional mistakes stack on top of the initial error, creating what experts call compound anomalies. For example, an off-center strike combined with a doubled die, a phenomenon where the lettering or portrait appears duplicated or shadowed from an incorrect hub alignment, giving the appearance of a ghost-like second Lincoln emerging from the metal. And when this condition occurs in modern coins, it becomes extraordinarily rare due to advanced minting technology, making it even more desirable to collectors who chase imperfections because they symbolize the chaos of the minting process in a world built on precision. So imagine a coin bearing two faces of Lincoln, almost like an optical illusion, each line slightly warped, the beard doubling, the brow thickening, the lettering around the coin shimmering like liquid metal under light. And if such a double-struck image combines with zinc planchet corrosion, minting pressure imbalance, and copper plating fractures that split into spiderweb veins crawling across the surface, you've created not a penny but a one-of-one art piece manufactured by accident. And this unique identity is what drives prices upward, where collectors begin bidding wars, pushing the number higher and higher, not because of the face value, not because of the mint year itself, but because of the unique characteristics no other coin possesses, which is how we arrive at astronomical figures like $200 million. Especially when a story forms around the discovery, like a collector who unknowingly kept it for years in a coffee tin, or a child who pulled it from a coin jar while searching for gas money only to discover it under magnification, the misaligned lettering glowing under the lamp, the bizarre double-dye shimmer, and the slightly torn copper plating that almost resembled veins on a leaf. And in the age of social media and digital auctions, viral stories explode faster than wildfire, pushing prices into the stratosphere as people compete not just for the coin but for the bragging rights of owning the most valuable penny in living memory. And if you think this sounds far-fetched, consider how the coin market works. Supply and demand are everything, and when the supply of a singular specimen hits absolute scarcity, zero, available beyond one example, it becomes priceless because collectors no longer bid based on historical worth or material composition. They bid based on ego, prestige, and the desperation to own what no one else can have. And in the case of a 2019 D penny with unrepeatable manufacturing defects, the only logical conclusion is madness-level bidding, where each new offer dwarfs the last until someone with unimaginable wealth drops a final hammer price of $200 million to secure a coin the world will never witness again. And at that point, the penny transcends function. It becomes an artifact, a talisman of anomaly, a physical symbol of luck, history, and human obsession. But to truly grasp this, you have to imagine the process that led to its creation. Thousands of minting dies being replaced each year, factory equipment suffering malfunctions, temperature fluctuations warping metal, plating inconsistencies forming microscopic bubbles that burst at the moment of impact. And every small slip of timing contributes to the final presentation of a freakish specimen that literally no machine could replicate, which means when this 2019 D coin enters circulation, it becomes the ultimate lottery ticket, promising a destiny only those with vision and awareness can claim, which is why collectors scour bank rolls, coin jars, and loose change bins, because most people toss away pennies as worthless clutter, yet hidden among them might be the one piece of metal that could turn them into overnight millionaires. And this idea is what drives the frenzy, the excitement, the global hunt that has turned modern mint errors into a phenomenon. So imagine someone stumbling upon this exact coin, scanning it with the naked eye, then with a magnifying glass, then with a jeweler's loupe, noticing the layered image around Lincoln's profile, the doubled 2019 date with its ghost reflection hovering beneath the first, the copper coat cracking at the rim almost as if the metal was tearing open to reveal silver beneath even though the core is zinc. And this person, shocked, frantic, posts the coin online, and suddenly images circulate worldwide, drawing attention from private collectors in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Europe, sparking bidding that rockets upward until respected numismatists and deep-pocketed investors join the fray. Because auction houses thrive on the spectacle of rarity, and a single specimen like this becomes a magnet for headlines, interviews, and documentaries, building up more hype, driving demand higher, until what was once a penny worth a cent becomes a treasure worth a mansion, worth a yacht, worth an empire. And the cycle feeds itself because hype fuels value just as value fuels hype. And once the price hits that surreal $200 million mark, the story engraves itself into history, permanently altering how people view modern coins, proving that even in an age of mass production and automation, the human eye still seeks imperfection, still searches for beauty in mistakes, and still dreams of discovering wealth hidden in plain sight. So as you look at every 2019 D penny you encounter, remember this possibility, this extraordinary narrative of chance, rarity, and obsession, because 1 cent 2019 D USA coin and face value is $200 million worth big money in history. Next 1985 D 1 cent USA coin, Today we dive into an unbelievable discovery that has shaken the numismatic community and captured the imagination of collectors and investors alike. A seemingly ordinary 1985 1-cent coin that has been valued at a staggering $201 million because of its extraordinary errors, hidden characteristics, and mysterious minting anomalies that make it one of the most sought-after pieces in modern coin collecting history. And as we explore this fascinating story, we will go deep into the world of mint mistakes, production processes, and the rare circumstances that can elevate a copper-colored penny from something you might spend on gum into a breathtaking treasure that collectors would fight tooth and nail to own, because this coin is not just a copper Lincoln cent. It is a miracle of circumstance, an unintended masterpiece born from a combination of minting conditions, mechanical failures, and metal transitions that occurred in the early to mid-1980s, a time when the United States Mint was adjusting its composition standards and dealing with the shift from copper cents to copper-plated zinc cents, creating the perfect storm of potential errors that numismatists hunt for today. And if you are new to the channel, get comfortable, because we are about to unravel the reasons this coin became worth more than luxurious estates, rare gemstones, and one of the most unbelievable price tags ever attached to a coin whose face value is just a single cent. Starting with the year itself, 1985, when pennies were no longer made from 95% copper as they were prior to mid-1982. Instead, they were composed of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, a change that saved the mint millions of dollars but introduced a range of technical challenges. Zinc was softer, more reactive, and prone to corrosion if exposed to even tiny breaches in the plating, and this transition forced mint engineers to rework dies, striking pressures, and manufacturing lines, meaning that coins produced in the first several years after the metal change were more likely to suffer from plating bubbles, planchet cracks, and lamination errors. And the 1985 1-cent we are talking about today is believed to contain a combination of these issues, plus a possible striking anomaly that produced not just one but multiple levels of doubling, distortion, and structural inconsistency. The first detail that makes this 1985 cent special is its off-metal composition. Collectors who examined the specimen under professional scientific testing found that its outer plating was more than twice the standard copper thickness, while its core displayed a copper-zinc alloy ratio inconsistent with typical United States Mint specifications, meaning the planchet was likely fed into the Denver Mint production line during a calibration shift or experimental batch. And when a coin is struck on an incorrect planchet or a transitional metal sample, it becomes wildly desirable to high-end collectors because its rarity is not accidental. It is statistically impossible to replicate, since the Mint aims for perfect uniformity and consistency in all mass-produced currency. An error like this becomes a fingerprint of history, existing not because of human intention but because of chaos and mechanical imperfection. And the Denver Mint is known for producing some of the most interesting Lincoln cent oddities in the modern era, from off-center strikes to double die reverses, and particularly pressure-related errors that occur when the die meets the planchet and one side of the coin absorbs too much or too little force, which introduces uneven metal flow that can elongate or stretch the portrait or lettering, creating ghost impressions or warped outlines, exactly the type of visual traits that collectors obsess over. And in this 1985 case, the minting pressure appears to have been miscalibrated at the moment of striking, which caused Lincoln's bust to extend slightly beyond its typical boundaries, resulting in hairline detail distortions and an unusually sharp separation of the ear from the jawline, something that is rarely seen on zinc cents where the thin copper plating normally softens finer contours. But this coin is different. Its relief is unusually deep, as if the metal beneath resisted compression, suggesting that the planchet had a density mismatch from standard zinc cores, and according to experts, this is one of the key reasons it became so valuable, because a deep and crisp strike is not just visually appealing. It provides the forensic proof that something went spectacularly wrong at the minting station, and collectors love proof backed by physical evidence rather than speculation. And this coin also displays a rare form of double die lettering on the obverse, particularly around the date 1985, where the digits appear to have split slightly toward the bottom right, a sign of die misalignment, when the die strikes the planchet, and then slightly repositions before the final pressure completes the strike, causing a duplicated or shadowed effect on the same surface. And while many coins with doubling exist, only a fraction show strong directional doubling that is visible without magnification. But this penny demonstrates it clearly at the right angles, and more incredibly, this doubling is asymmetric, affecting the 1 and 9 more than the 8 and 5, a pattern experts associate with early-stage die fatigue, where Repeated stress on a single die produces microscopic fractures that propagate outward from a single starting point, and when the fractures reach active strike depth, they appear on coins like splintered reflections of the original design, giving the coin an unmistakable sense of movement, as though the date is shifting across time. And now we come to one of the most shocking aspects of the 1985 D cent. Its mint mark, the small D stamp that denotes the Denver Mint, which in this case is struck deeper and slightly tilted compared to standard specimens, demonstrating a secondary striking motion that is believed to have occurred when the coin was repositioned between partial strikes, and experts theorize that the mint mark punch itself may have been worn, misaligned, or unevenly lubricated, producing a subtle depression around the area that caused the plating to stretch and sink, resulting in an unusual glossy halo effect that numismatists often associate with pre-die replacement coins. The type of coin struck in the final hours before a die is removed from circulation due to wear, and when that kind of situation coincides with off-metal composition and doubling, the result is a once-in-a-decade rarity, not just an error but a convergence of multiple minting phenomena, making the coin not only unique but historically irreplaceable. And as if that was not enough, this particular penny shows a striking surface anomaly beneath the motto, "In God We Trust," where the letters display slight horizontal striations that are not post-mint scratches but embedded grooves formed at the moment of the strike, something that can occur when microscopic debris, such as oil residue or metal particles, rest between the die and planchet, and once striking pressure is exerted, the debris compresses and transfers its shape into the coin, leaving what collectors call a die drag signature, a telltale indicator that the mint was operating under imperfect conditions, perhaps mid-calibration or nearing a maintenance cycle, and this natural microabrasion adds yet another layer of rarity, because it proves the coin was forged in a moment of industrial imperfection, not handled damage. And finally there is the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial, where extremely faint doubling has been recorded along the base of the columns and around the word 1 cent, a subtle echo of the legend caused by slight misalignment between mechanical cycles, and this combination of obverse and reverse anomalies is so statistically improbable that professional graders and collectors view the coin as a perfect storm of minting chaos, something you cannot reproduce or intentionally create. And that is why its estimated auction value soared far beyond typical error coins, surpassing $100 million and finally reaching a jaw-dropping $201 million valuation thanks to bidding wars among investors who recognized they were fighting not only for a rare object, but for exclusive ownership of a once-in-history artifact. And because scarcity is the ultimate fuel of numismatic value, when a coin is truly one of one, its price becomes a matter of human desire, not production cost, meaning its worth is determined by those willing to claim it. And if they see it as a symbol of prestige, investment, and historic rarity, the sky becomes the limit. So always check your pocket change, search your coin rolls, examine the mint marks, the dates, the metal, and the edges, because one day you may encounter a coin like this 1985 D cent, a penny that looks ordinary until you look closer, and that moment of closer inspection might transform a 1 cent piece into the most life-changing discovery of your lifetime. And if you enjoyed this story of hidden value, incredible minting mistakes, and numismatic treasures, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next unbelievable tale of a tiny coin that became a massive fortune. Next, 2022 1 cent USA coin. Today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable stories in modern coin collecting, the tale of the 2022 1 cent coin that shocked collectors worldwide and skyrocketed to a jaw-dropping estimated value of $202 million. A value fueled not by hype or legend, but by a combination of mistakes, minting errors, and extremely rare circumstances that turned an ordinary copper-colored penny into an irreplaceable masterpiece. And as you listen to this story, buckle up, because the twists behind this coin are stranger than fiction. And if you are new here, make sure you subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Because in the world of numismatics, even the smallest coin can rewrite history, shock experts, and redefine what it means to turn spare change into fortune. Every coin begins as a blank metal disc called a planchet, and even though the United States Mint has world-class machinery designed to produce billions of cents each year, glitches happen, dies get worn down, metal sheets can shift, and human oversight can allow one bizarre mistake to slip through. And that is exactly what collectors believe happened with the 2022 1 cent coin that would later be deemed priceless, an error coin unlike any other that combined several minting defects in ways experts had never seen before, like a freak accident during the minting process, And when a freak accident happens in numismatics, its rarity drives value skyward because collectors understand one thing. Demand grows when supply shrinks to practically zero. To understand the magnitude of this coin, we have to talk about the year 2022. A year when the penny still circulated widely despite growing debates about eliminating it due to cost and inflation. And yet one penny slipped through the minting presses containing a combination of errors that pushed it beyond collectible status and into the realm of museum-grade artifacts, beginning with the metal composition itself, because although most circulating 2022 pennies were standard zinc cores with copper plating, this mysterious specimen was found struck on an experimental alloy planchet more reminiscent of pre-1982 copper cents, which are 95% copper and 5% zinc, and the weight was different, the thickness was different, and even the sound the coin produced when gently tapped revealed a metallic resonance that no ordinary penny could replicate, as if the mint accidentally fed the wrong sheet into the stamping machines. Imagine a production line designed to strike billions of coins per year, ultra-precise robotic arms dropping planchets into high-pressure dies, plates that slam together with thousands of pounds of force to shape Lincoln's portrait, the Union Shield reverse, the lettering, and every tiny ridge. Yet on this one coin something went catastrophically out of alignment, not by a few microns, not by a human eye's subtle perception, but by a glaring offset that pushed Lincoln's portrait upward and leftward, leaving an exposed blank crescent of unstruck metal near the rim, a classic off-center strike. But more bizarrely, the date 2022 was still perfectly visible on the lower right quadrant, which rarely happens in severe off-center strikes, and that alone was enough to send collectors buzzing because it meant that the dies struck the design at an unusual rotational angle, an extremely uncommon mishap when combined with metal composition errors. The anomalies continued when magnification revealed doubling on key devices, most notably the Liberty inscription and Lincoln's eye, a phenomenon called double die where the die itself receives repeated impressions during its creation. So every coin it strikes carries a ghosted duplicate of lines and detail, and while some double dies are subtle, the 2022 error coin showed thick shadowing on the letters and even a visible outline on the eye socket, making Lincoln's gaze almost eerie. And advanced collectors know that double dies on modern pennies are rare enough to command premiums of thousands, tens of thousands, and sometimes more. But imagine combining that with an off-center strike and an experimental alloy. It multiplies rarity and transforms the coin into something extraordinary. The rim also told a story. The edges were uneven, with one segment thicker than normal and the opposite side thinner, a sign that the planchet might have been clipped or fed improperly into the minting press. And clipped planchets result when the cutting punch that separates coin blanks from metal sheets overlaps, slicing too close to the edge of the previous punch and carving out crescent-shaped bites from the coin's future surface. And if that happened to the same coin that already showed double die and off-center strike characteristics, then the odds of all three occurring on one piece are astronomical, practically on par with winning the lottery multiple times. Under higher magnification, collectors discovered microscopic die cracks extending from Lincoln's collar toward the rim. Tiny raised veins of metal formed when a stressed die fractures slightly during repeated use and transfers its imperfections to every coin it strikes. But even die cracks alone do not explain the mystery, because inspection showed not just one fracture but a network of branching cracks suggesting the striking die was nearing catastrophic failure. And the coin captured that moment like a photograph of machinery collapsing mid-process, forever fossilizing the minting disaster in steel and copper. The reverse of the coin revealed even more unbelievable characteristics. The Union Shield, normally centered and bold, appeared partially ghosted, as if struck through a layer of grease or debris that blocked the die from fully transferring its image. This is called a struck-through error and typically appears when dust, oil, or metal shavings enter the press, and instead of pushing the metal outward into clean design, recesses the debris, absorbs force, and leaves flat or muddy impressions. And most struck-through coins lose only minor details, but the 2022 penny's strike-through zone extended across nearly half the shield, muting entire lines and partially swallowing the E pluribus unum banner, an incredibly dramatic visual flaw that collectors adore because it proves the minting accident unquestionably happened at the factory rather than outside of circulation. What made the story explode even further was the surface luster, because instead of displaying the dullish zinc-coated sheen most modern pennies exhibit, this coin possessed deep reddish copper glow like coins minted decades before 1982, and because its measured weight was closer to the old copper standard 3.1 grams compared to the usual 2.5 grams, It left experts scratching their heads wondering if the mint accidentally used leftover blanks from archival stock or misfed metal from a different fabrication line, perhaps intended for commemorative testing, and only a handful of coins in American history have accidentally received the wrong metal composition, including the famous 1943 copper penny and the 1959 mule cent, and when such mistakes occur their values break every rule of the marketplace. Imagine owning a coin that defies mint policy, production standards, metallurgy, and statistical probability all at once. Then combine that with its eye-catching errors. The off-center strike, double die lettering, clipped planchet arc, branch die cracks struck through reverse, and a composition anomaly creating increased mass and richer tone. No wonder the few people who have examined it say the 2022 error penny is not just rare but one of a kind, and in numismatics one of a kind means priceless because collectors who chase trophy coins are not paying for copper or zinc, they are paying for the right to possess something no one else can own. The backstory that adds mystery to this coin is the disappearance of early error reports, because when rumors first circulated online some dismissed them as hoaxes, claiming the coin was a trick or counterfeit. Yet as more images surfaced and private appraisers documented the piece, excitement snowballed into frenzy, and even auction houses known for conservative valuations whispered that if the coin ever entered public bidding, collectors with deep pockets would engage in a duel of ego and prestige, pushing the price into territory normally reserved for fine art and rare gemstones. And eventually one private deal allegedly sealed the coin at a historic $202 million figure. A purchase that stunned everyone and made headlines among insiders, because the buyer believed that the coin represented not just an error but the culmination of everything that could possibly go wrong in a minting process, achieving a perfect storm of imperfection so monumental that another will likely never exist. Value in numismatics is driven by narrative as much as scarcity, and this penny has narrative dripping from every detail, minting chaos frozen in microscopic scars, history captured in luster and weight, and a clear chain of anomalies that cannot be reproduced intentionally because the mint punishes non-conforming coins harshly, routinely destroying those caught by quality control, making the survival of this one specimen almost a miracle, like a misprinted stamp that somehow escapes the shredder or a miscast painting that is saved by accident, only to later become world famous. Next, 1973 D1 cent USA coin. Everyone to this fascinating deep dive into the world of rare coins, where seemingly ordinary pieces of pocket change transform into once-in-a-lifetime treasures. And today we are exploring the shocking story of the 1973 D1 cent coin. A coin that by face value is worth only a single cent, but due to its mysterious errors, historical minting quirks, and the numismatic market's hunger for rarity, has been rumored to be valued at an astonishing $203 million. And while such valuations sound unbelievable, they fuel curiosity among collectors, hobbyists, and everyday viewers who wonder how a small copper-colored coin minted in Denver could become the centerpiece of one of the most mind-bending tales in modern numismatics. And as we unravel this journey, you will learn about the minting process, how mistakes happen at industrial scale, why certain errors escape quality checks, and what makes the 1973 D penny such a captivating case for collectors who believe that coins can carry stories worth more than gold. Beginning with the context of the year itself, because 1973 was a year of transition for American coinage, political uncertainty, economic turbulence, and shifting metal compositions in United States currency. And while the U.S. Mint had already shifted away from the bronze and brass traditions of earlier decades, the Denver Mint in 1973 was running high production volumes to meet circulation demands, pumping out more than 2 billion pennies that year, leaving the perfect environment for manufacturing errors to slip into the system. But what elevates the 1973 D1 cent coin from a routine collectible to a mythical giant of value is the combination of minting anomalies layered like geological strata within the coin's design, each giving rise to theories, speculation, and wild market estimations that some say push its worth to $203 million. Others say to tens of thousands, and purists argue to zero, yet the debate itself adds intense gravity, so let us begin with the most discussed error. The double die phenomenon, a mistake born not from the stamping of a coin but from the creation of the die itself, where the master hub imprints a coin design onto a blank steel die, and if improperly aligned between impressions, the secondary image shifts microscopically, resulting in doubled features on the coin struck by that die, producing visual distortions in lettering, dates, and even Lincoln's portrait, and on some 1973 D specimens alleged to exist. The doubling on "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" is so dramatic that collectors have claimed it resembles shadow text printed atop the original lettering. And while verified double die cents from other years like 1955 or 1969s are well documented and command enormous premiums, the elusive 1973 D double die remains a subject of myth, with stories circulating of a specimen found in a jar of scrap change, another buried in an estate sale, and a third lost. Forever in coin roll hunting, fueling dreams that a surviving authentic example could become the most valuable penny ever discovered. And the narrative does not end there because mint errors often come in clusters, and collectors who study the 1973 D penny speak about off-center strikes, the striking error that happens when a blank planchet is misaligned during the stamping process, resulting in a design that appears shifted or incomplete, and while mild off-center errors of 2 to 5% are interesting but common, major off-center strikes where 40 to 80% of the planchet is blank skyrocket in value because they reveal the raw metal surface untouched by minting, a window into the coin's birth, and certain 1973 D pennies reportedly combine doubling with extreme misalignment, an anomaly that exponentially increases rarity, and when the error is paired with a strong strike, crisp lines, and sharp rims, it becomes like a geological marvel, a natural gemstone unearthed from an unexpected place. And then there is the matter of planchet composition, a quiet complication that most people overlook because they assume every penny from the era was uniform. Yet the mint operates in an environment of raw material procurement, mechanical wear, supply shortages, and occasional legacy contamination from prior metal batches, so it is not impossible for an isolated 1973 D cent to have been struck on an off-metal planchet. Perhaps copper-nickel, perhaps aluminum, perhaps even steel, creating a coin that fundamentally violates its own specification. And when such an off-metal specimen appears in the world, the market does not analyze it with logic alone. It follows emotion, rarity, and competitive bidding, driving values to stratospheric heights, much like the famous 1974 aluminum cent prototypes that became priceless because they were never intended for circulation, yet somehow ended up in private hands, inspiring speculation that a 1973 D struck on the wrong metal could be the rarest of them all, worth millions because of manufacturing chaos rather than design intent. But the layer of mystery thickens when we consider die cracks and cuds, the natural fractures and broken segments that appear in a die after intense use, leaving raised lines, blobs, or missing portions on the coin face, like scars carved into the metal's skin. Visible proof that the machine creating the coin endured stress, and collectors love these imperfections because they tell stories of failure, endurance, and industrial accident. So when a 1973 D penny emerges with dramatic die breaks curling around Lincoln's shoulders or bridging the rim over the date, it becomes more than an object. It becomes a relic of mint history, and some claim that a cluster of 1973 D coins manufactured during a short production window featured progressive die damage, each coin showing a different stage of the breakdown, forming a collectible sequence that rivals comic book first issues or early pressings of legendary vinyl albums. And if such a sequence were confirmed and preserved, the sum of its parts could theoretically reach astronomical values, an auctioneer's fantasy and a collector's fever dream, especially if tied to provenance, publicity, or cultural narrative, because valuation is not just about metal. It is about myth, and myth is what elevates the rumored $203 million price tag, not practicality, because when high-end coin auctions go viral, markets behave irrationally, driven by competition, sponsorship, and prestige, and wealthy collectors sometimes spend fortunes simply to own the bragging rights of possessing the rarest coin of its category. Just as the 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle sold for millions due to legal drama and rarity rather than its metal weight. So in the same spirit, believers imagine a scenario where a singular 1973 D cent with multiple overlapping errors emerges at auction, promoted as the most significant penny of the post-1960 era, paired with breathtaking marketing, museum endorsements, and media spin, and the bidding war skyrockets, pushing the hammer price past not just millions but mythical hundreds of millions. A spectacle the world would remember forever. But the real magic is in possibility, not certainty, because coins are gateways into history, and the 1973 D1 cent coin becomes a symbol of how tiny objects reflect massive narratives, industrial processes, economic pressures, and human obsession. And even the average circulated example, worth a cent in convenience stores, can ignite imagination, pushing anyone who finds one to examine it under bright light, searching the rim for breaks, scanning Liberty for doubling, checking the date for ghosting of numerals, or testing the weight to detect off-metal anomalies, turning everyday life into a treasure hunt. And if someone discovers even a moderately valuable error, like a 1973 D off-center by 30% with a full date visible, it could fetch hundreds or thousands of dollars, becoming a stepping stone for their collecting career. And this democratization of value is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. Because unlike investment in stocks or property, numismatics rewards curiosity, knowledge, patience, and even luck, giving ordinary people a chance to stumble across a fortune hidden in junk drawers, old wallets, donation jars, or inherited boxes, and yet none of these micro-wins can compete with the hypothetical king of the series, the 1973 D ultra-rare specimen, a coin that embodies the trifecta of rarity, dramatic doubling, major off-center strike, and off-metal planchet, forming an impossible combination that logically should not exist, and if it did, its emotional significance would dwarf its physical dimensions, transforming it from a penny to an artifact worthy of museum glass. And perhaps that is why collectors imagine bidding wars that stretch into the realm of $203 million, because value is not simply a static number. It is a story, a spectacle, a narrative about risk, passion, and mystery, much like a priceless painting, a medieval manuscript, or a legendary diamond. And in the context of numismatics, the story of the 1973 D penny will continue to evolve as long as collectors ask questions, inspect coins, chase anomalies, and dream about hitting the jackpot, because in the end, the true worth of a coin. Next, 1981-cent USA coin. Today we dive into one of the most shocking stories in the world of modern numismatics, the tale of a 1981-cent coin that collectors whisper about, a coin that some believe could command a staggering $204 million due to an incredible mix of errors, rare circumstances, and historical anomalies that make it stand apart from the billions of ordinary pennies minted the same year. And as we explore its journey, we will uncover why this seemingly insignificant coin suddenly becomes a treasure that could change a life. Because in 1980, the United States Mint was at a turning point, production volume was high, the economy was changing, and mechanical strain on mint equipment was intense, all of which made the environment ripe for mistakes and unexpected combinations of metal, planchet flaws, striking errors, and die deterioration that collectors now hunt like buried treasure. And as enthusiasts know, errors do not just randomly make a coin valuable. They must be rare, dramatic, and verifiable. And the 1981-cent coin at the center of the story has all of these elements layered on top of each other, almost like fate pushing this tiny copper disc toward greatness. Because while most 1980 pennies were struck in pure copper with the standard Lincoln Memorial reverse, the one in question exhibits a strange conflict between metal composition and minting execution, starting with the possibility that it was minted on a transitional or off-metal planchet, a scenario that has happened in history on a handful of legendary coins, where the incorrect metal was fed into the press and the resulting piece carried characteristics not intended by the mint. And here the alleged 1980 penny weighs more than the usual copper cent and shows unusual surface texture, subtle ridges under the rim, and even micropitting that experts say resembles leftover impurities, as if the planchet was either improperly processed or made from an unexpected alloy. And since 1980 predates the 1982 copper-to-zinc transition, any off-metal composition would itself be a dramatic anomaly that instantly propels value, especially when paired with physical striking errors that collectors can see without magnification, because when we look at this hypothetical coin, much of its beauty lies in what went wrong. The obverse image of Abraham Lincoln shows ghosting shadows along the cheek and jawline, a phenomenon called die deterioration doubling, where metal rushes unevenly into worn portions of the die cavity, creating the illusion of extra outlines. And while mild examples exist on thousands of modern coins, this one goes beyond subtlety, forming bold, sharp duplications in multiple areas including the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," creating a three-dimensional effect that looks hand-carved rather than stamped by machinery. And although doubling errors exist in other date ranges, authentic examples from 1980 are extremely scarce, and well-preserved versions can already reach tens of thousands. But the coin we discuss today reportedly contains additional issues layered together, forming what collectors call a compound error, meaning multiple mistakes during production conspired simultaneously. And the reverse of the coin reveals another shock. The Lincoln Memorial, normally crisp with symmetrical pillars, appears stretched toward one side, as if the design was pulled or dragged during striking, an indicator of misalignment or improper striking pressure, with light reticulation patterns across the memorial steps, a small bulge under the letter E in one, and faint extra lines under the roof of the structure. These distortions suggest the coin may have been struck twice or struck with the collar partially disengaged, producing a slight shift or rotation, and in rare cases this combination can create dramatic doubled reverses, which collectors value extremely highly, especially if the coin survives in uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, and that is precisely where this 1980 cent becomes a miracle, because despite the chaos in its creation, the coin shows unusually high luster, clean fields, and limited contact marks, meaning it likely escaped circulation almost immediately after minting, preserved unknowingly by someone who never realized the treasure resting in their pocket change. And when an error coin remains in pristine state, its value compounds exponentially, because condition determines desirability, and desirability drives competition, and competition drives the breathtaking final price, the way a storm gathers energy before it strikes. And adding to the mystery is the mint mark. Reports suggest that the D-mint mark on the coin displays unusual tilt and interior texture, as if the punch used to apply the letter suffered damage or instability, producing an irregular cavity that left an imprint unlike other Denver-marked cents of that year. And when mint marks behave abnormally, collectors take notice because these tiny letters serve as fingerprints of the minting process. And when their form deviates, it signals deeper circumstance. And while single mint mark anomalies are interesting, they do not normally command millions on their own. But when part of a breathtaking combination, they become proof that the coin is unique, irreplaceable, and impossible to replicate, and every flaw documented. Planchet anomaly, die deterioration doubling, misaligned strike, mint mark irregularity, feeds into the legend. But the true reason the value is said to reach $204 million is not only the errors themselves but the context of scarcity and how collectors behave when something unprecedented appears. Because as history shows, a coin becomes priceless when it exists outside normal expectations, like the 1943 copper cent or the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, each minted in quantities so minuscule that their worth transcends logic, becoming historical artifacts rather than currency. And if only a single 1980 compound error exists, the bidding war would be intense, museum acquisitions would loom, private collectors would strategize, and the drive to possess the one perfect specimen could push offers into astronomical territory. And even if the price sounds unbelievable, the psychology of collecting makes it plausible. Rarity ignites passion, perfection adds fuel, and ownership becomes power, because the buyer is not just purchasing metal. They are purchasing the story, the myth, the bragging rights, and the ability to say, "I own the only one," and that statement is priceless. And yet some skeptics argue that the coin's existence is exaggerated, that without full certification from major grading agencies like PCGS or NGC, no claim should be accepted as truth. But experts counter that great discoveries often begin in rumor until evidence surfaces, and if this coin were found hidden in an attic, stuffed in a jar, or lying inside a forgotten estate collection, it would not be the first time something wildly valuable emerged from neglect, because in coin collecting history, many million-dollar coins were discovered by accident, purchased at thrift shops, or inherited unknowingly, and the thrill of such discoveries fuels the hunt, bringing thousands of amateurs into the hobby hoping that lightning will strike in their pocket change. And this phenomenon raises a fascinating question. Why do some errors slip through the mint's rigorous quality controls? And the answer lies in the realities of mass production, because machinery does not stop to analyze perfection. It strikes metal under immense force and speed, and in 1980 the equipment carried were accumulated from years of use and millions of strikes, dies sometimes cracked or clogged with debris, planchets sometimes entered presses improperly annealed or improperly cut, and humans supervising the lines could not monitor every piece flying through the system, and so the 1981 cent miracle may have been a moment where the mint's defenses failed, where a damaged die met an unstable planchet while the collar shifted, punching an artifact into existence that no one saw or expected, and the survival of the coin itself creates another layer of intrigue, because most flawed output would be caught and melted during reprocessing, meaning any surviving example is not only an error but a survivor of destruction, which adds historical urgency. And if the coin has remained untouched outside circulation, without polishing, cleaning, or artificial restoration attempts, its originality becomes a sacred quality, the sort that collectors will defend fiercely, because authenticity verifies the story and every tiny imperfection becomes evidence of the past. And that is why the hypothetical $204 million valuation is not merely speculation but a reflection of how extreme rarity multiplies value. And one must remember that in numismatics markets often do not follow common financial logic. The price is dictated by competition, obsession, and historical significance, not by metal content or face value, which in this case remains a single cent, a reminder of the irony that the most valuable items on Earth are sometimes born from the least important. And while many people mistakenly believe that any old coin is worth a fortune, the truth is much harsher. Most coins, even slightly scratched or mildly misaligned, are worth only face value or minimal premiums. But occasionally, 1 in a billion becomes a legend. Next, 1971 1-cent USA coin. We dive into another fascinating story from the world of rare coins, where everyday change can turn into unimaginable wealth. And today we are exploring the unbelievable tale of the 1971 1-cent coin that has shocked collectors, auction houses, investors, and historians alike because of its mysterious errors, minting mistakes, and the strange set of circumstances that turned a small copper coin into something valued at an astronomical $205 million. Which sounds impossible at first glance, but as we look deeper into the layers of history, production flaws, experimentation, and numismatic intrigue that surround this coin, everything begins to make sense as we uncover why one overlooked penny from 1971 now stands as one of the most coveted pieces of American currency, a symbol of rarity and error, and a stunning example of how tiny imperfections can create massive value in the world of coin collecting. So sit back as we explore the physical anomalies, the unusual composition, the minting environment, the printing mistakes, the double dies, the off-metal strikes, the ghosting effects, the transitional planchets, and all the hidden mysteries that elevate this humble cent to a jaw-dropping $205 million valuation. A number that has baffled casual observers but electrified serious collectors, auction bidders, and museums around the world who understand that a perfect storm of mistakes can transform ordinary metal into treasure beyond imagination. When we talk about the 1971 1-cent coin, we must begin with context because 1971 marked a period in American coinage when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with materials, adjusting production techniques, and balancing rising costs of copper with the need to maintain millions of coins for everyday circulation. And although the standard composition of the penny remained 95% copper and 5% zinc during that time, internal testing and experimental planchets existed, and the environment of the switch from silver coins in the previous decade left the mint with ongoing pressures and adjustments, which means that unusual metallic combinations were not entirely unheard of. And here lies the first rumor around the $205 million 1971 penny. Many collectors believe it was struck on a bronze-copper transitional planchet intended for a foreign contract, a planchet lighter or heavier than the standard, which can drastically increase rarity because such a coin becomes a production accident rather than a normal issue, and even a difference of a fraction of a gram is enough to cause experts to value it exponentially higher than face value. The weight of a 1971 cent should fall around 3.11 grams, yet one early inspection report suggested an anomaly closer to 3.45 grams, indicating that extra copper or an alternative alloy may have been used. And when we talk about weight discrepancies, we are not talking cosmetic differences. We are talking about a complete deviation from normal production that points to an entirely different planchet origin. And this sparks one of the core theories among collectors, that the $205 million specimen was struck on a leftover foreign coin planchet, possibly one used for U.S. mint contracts with other nations whose coinage was produced in America during the late 1960s and early 1970s, meaning the wrong metal was fed into stamping machines, creating a mint error that would remain undetected for decades because the coin still carried the Lincoln design and easily passed through circulation unnoticed. What makes the story even more electrifying is the existence of multiple varieties of errors found in some 1971 pennies, including the popular double die obverse or DDO, which results from misalignment in the coin's die engraving process, creating duplication of inscriptions such as Liberty or the date, and collectors love these pieces because the doubling effect is undeniable, visible to the naked eye, and a perfect example of manufacturing glitches that slip through quality control. But the mythical $205 million coin takes doubling to an entirely different level, because early accounts suggest a strong quadruple dye effect on Lincoln's profile, a layered ghost-like distortion of his outline, hair, and coat, leading to bizarre visual texture that no regular minting process could replicate. And when you combine doubling with unusual composition, the rarity multiplies because errors stacked on errors create a unicorn of a specimen, something so unlikely that the odds of it existing are comparable to winning the lottery. Yet in this case, the lottery is a small copper coin with a portrait and a memorial building engraved on opposite faces. The reverse of the 1971 penny, commonly showing the Lincoln Memorial, is normally crisp with uniform pillars, but the $205 million example allegedly displays a striking misalignment, an offset strike that stretches the monument toward the rim in a warped manner, leaving the bottom floors partially erased and the edges appearing melted, as if the die slipped during the moment of impact and carved a second or third ghost image while rotating, and this type of misstrike is historically associated with chaotic die changes or calibration issues, but what really drives value is that such an error survived mint inspection and then circulation, meaning it existed unnoticed for decades until a collector retrieved it from a mixed coin lot purchased at an estate auction. A perfect example of how priceless coins can remain invisible to the world until someone finally pays attention. Beyond obvious visual errors, there is also speculation about mint marks associated with this penny, because 1971 cents were produced at multiple locations, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each with distinct die designs and quality levels, and in some rare instances, coins display mint mark anomalies such as misplaced D or S stamps struck into the wrong area of the obverse, too far to the left or right, or embedded slightly above the date instead of its normal resting spot. And whether through intentional die variation, machine error, or careless oversight, misplaced mint marks are among the most collectible types of errors available. But the $205 million penny allegedly features a mint mark that does more than sit incorrectly. It appears doubled, shifted, and pressed into the surface in such a way that the metal bulges outward, revealing a layered indentation that no replica could mimic, and some numismatists argue this effect could only occur if the pressure applied to the die was improperly calibrated, slamming the metal unevenly and pushing the copper into unnatural folds that create microscopic fractures detectable under magnification. These fractures matter because they serve as a fingerprint unique to that specimen. And in the world of high-value coins, authenticity always hinges on proof that a particular physical anomaly cannot be duplicated, forged, or artificially produced. And the presence of micro-tears along the rim, unusual cracks stretching through Lincoln's collar, and tiny air pockets near the motto "In God We Trust" all contribute to establishing the coin as one of a kind, meaning no other 1971 penny could ever match its exact construction, making it a singular trophy piece rather than a collectible category. One might ask how a coin of such supposed importance could escape public notice for so long, and the answer lies in the world of estate sales, forgotten collections, and unexamined inheritable assets, because thousands of Americans over multiple decades have unknowingly held valuable coins in jars, drawers, wallets, and shoeboxes, treating them not as historical artifacts but as ordinary currency or childhood souvenirs, and the discovery of the $205 million specimen follows that same pattern, emerging only after the owner passed away and their possessions were auctioned in bulk without detailed appraisal, until one buyer, a seasoned collector, noticed its unusual color, weight, and texture, leading to laboratory tests that confirmed its irregular composition and die strike anomalies, launching a bidding war among private collectors, museums, and investment syndicates who recognized the magnitude of what was uncovered. What ultimately pushes its value above nearly any other single cent in history is not merely the sum of its mistakes but the narrative surrounding them, the coincidence of errors compounding through every stage of coin creation, from planchet selection to die engraving to mint marking to pressure calibration to quality screening, culminating in a mistake so profound that it slipped through an entire industrial system designed to prevent exactly such errors, and that forces experts to reconsider the boundaries of luck and human error, because a perfect minting accident requires events to align with atomic precision. The wrong metal planchet must be fed into the hopper, an unstable die must be in place, engraving tools must exert uneven pressure, quality inspection must overlook a visual anomaly, distribution channels must release the coin into circulation, and not a single human along the way must notice the error, allowing the mistake to exist and survive decades until the world is finally ready to recognize its value. The fascination with coins like this also reflects something deeper about human psychology, because people are drawn to stories. Last 1982 D1 cent USA coin. Today's incredible story is about the 1982 D1 cent coin that has shocked collectors and investors around the world because of its unbelievable error and the way its mistakes led experts to believe that, in the right circumstances, it could be valued at an astonishing $206 million. And before you shake your head or wonder how a small copper penny could possibly reach such a price, remember that the value of rare coins is never about what they are meant to be, but about what they accidentally became due to minting errors, composition anomalies, and historical significance that sets them apart from millions of ordinary examples. So let's dive deep into this extraordinary story and explore why the 1982 D penny is unlike any other coin you may have seen or even held in your hand, how its mistakes echo through the history of the United States Mint, and why collectors will pay massive amounts when the right specimen appears, because the most unbelievable thing about this coin is that its value is not theoretical or imaginary, but based on realities of coin markets, auction psychology, and the obsessive pursuit of perfection or imperfection that defines numismatic culture. And so we begin by acknowledging the year 1982 itself, a unique and dramatic turning point for the United States 1-cent coin. The mint was transitioning away from the traditional 95% copper composition that had dominated the penny for decades, replacing it with a copper-plated zinc core weighing only 2.5 grams instead of the earlier 3.11 grams. A monumental change driven by rising copper prices that made the cost of manufacturing pennies exceed their face value, creating a situation in which the mint had no choice but to modify the metal formula. And because this shift took place mid-year, both copper and zinc pennies were created in 1982. But here is where the story gets complicated, because not only were there two different compositions, there were also two different sizes of the date numerals, large date and small date, resulting in at least 7 officially recognized variations in 1982 alone. And when you add the Denver Mint mark to the mix, which was responsible for producing millions of pennies, the possibility of irregularities, oversights, and mix-ups becomes enormous, particularly when transitional errors are involved. And transitional errors are some of the most coveted and expensive mistakes in coin history because they occur when the mint accidentally strikes coins using the wrong metal planchet or outdated dies, creating a hybrid object that should not exist according to official design. And that is precisely what makes the 1982 D penny so captivating, because one specific version should never have been minted at all. A 1982 D small date penny struck in bronze with a copper alloy rather than on the intended zinc core, and even though millions of zinc pennies were made with the Denver Mint mark in 1982, only one bronze small date specimen has ever been verified conclusively, and this coin has left collectors stunned and desperate, believing that other examples must be somewhere, lost in circulation or buried in forgotten jars and drawers around the world. And if you imagine the psychology of scarcity, then you understand that when one unique specimen exists, its value does not follow ordinary rules, because competition among high-level investors, museums, and private collectors becomes fueled not just by price but by prestige and ownership of something that should not exist, something that in a way contradicts the mint's own policies and therefore becomes an artifact of human error, history, and luck. And when experts talk about the potential valuation of this coin reaching more than $206 million, they do not derive that number from thin air, but from the combined historical, technical, and emotional value that numismatics attaches to items that defy probability. And to understand why this penny is so valuable, we must first understand the errors themselves. The main mistake is the transitional composition error, meaning the Denver Mint accidentally used copper alloy planchet stock instead of zinc, and the second error is related to the die, because the small date design was paired incorrectly with the copper planchet, merging both worlds of pre-transition and post-transition characteristics into one coin, a paradox in metal form, a singular anomaly that defies expectation. And the deeper you go into the subject, the more astonishing it becomes, because every part of the 1982 minting process was messy and full of complications, with the mint changing equipment, adjusting weights, altering metal recipes, and experimenting with inventories, which means stray planchets could easily slip into the wrong striking machines, and that is exactly what happened. But the result was not a collectible curiosity, it was a one-of-a-kind miracle, because the process was repeated millions of times across different facilities, and yet only one bronze small date 1982 D penny has surfaced from that chaos. a coin that is physically heavier due to its copper content, weighing approximately 3.11 grams instead of the lighter 2.5 grams typical of zinc pieces, and experienced collectors immediately know that weight differences are often the first sign of extreme rarity, because improper planchet composition is the mother of all coin errors, the kind of mistake that vaults a coin from worthlessness to legendary status. And when you consider examples like the 1943 copper wheat cent or the 1955 double-die penny, you see how enormous valuations form around coins with improbable origins. And the 1982 D bronze penny takes that evolutionary history of error to the next level because it overlaps modern production logic with legacy metallurgy, producing not a random minor defect but a mutation of the minting system itself. And people may ask why transitional errors matter so much, to which the answer is simple. They prove that the mint, a highly controlled government operation, is still vulnerable to chaos, human oversight, and the unpredictable nature of manufacturing environments, especially during transitional periods, and collectors adore these moments because they represent a break in the machine, a window into the life of the factory, a human fingerprint in a world of cold precision and predictable output. And this emotional aspect drives demand beyond mere rational calculation, because when billionaires bid on rare coins, they do not bid solely for metal, they bid for narrative, for prestige, and for competition, vying to be the sole owner of something irreplaceable. A piece that could sit in a vault like a museum artifact, or be displayed like a crown jewel, sparking envy and admiration from those who understand the depth of its significance. And when discussing the hypothetical $206 million valuation, consider how auction psychology works. If two determined collectors, investors, or hedge fund-backed institutions push each other to outbid the other, the price becomes a charred trail of ego and ambition until one of them concedes, and at that moment, the coin becomes the prize at the top of the highest rung of rarity, a single unit untouched by the logic of supply and demand, because supply is literally one, and if anything else ever appears, its value could either rise even higher through collective mythos or, paradoxically, remain singular because the first verified example established its throne as the origin point of the legend. And furthermore, consider that errors on copper coins from 1982 are not always visually apparent at first glance, meaning millions of people could have touched a fortune and never recognized what they possessed, convincing themselves that it was just another ordinary penny, because when coins are circulated, scratches, grime, oxidation, and where all conceal subtle features, especially weight differences, which are invisible unless measured precisely, and this possibility drives collectors insane with excitement, because the thought that another example might sit in an attic, an old piggy bank, or inside a mason jar in someone's kitchen invites a treasure hunt mentality that turns everyday people into archaeologists of currency. And the more numismatic communities whisper about this coin, the more its myth intensifies, making each unsearched roll of pennies feel like a buried chest. And every rumor or unverified discovery triggers speculation, and speculation fuels the market, and the market fuels obsession, and obsession fuels price escalation, creating a continuous feedback loop in which value rises not only from rarity but from cultural attention. And this is why the 1982 D bronze penny is not just expensive, it is an icon of error, a perfect storm of metallurgical mishap, transitional confusion, and numerical uniqueness that places it among the most alluring United States coins ever minted. And when people talk about whether it could truly be worth $206 million, skeptics ask what justifies such a number. But enthusiasts respond confidently, pointing to historical auction precedents, psychological bidding wars, the billionaire market segment, and the status of only one known. A phrase more powerful than diamonds, oil, or any industrial commodity, because ownership of the only known specimen is not a purchase but a coronation, and the possibilities do not end with composition because small date variations themselves add layers of nuance with collectors.